November 2022, the labor unions wrote to government requesting for more than 100% increment in their base pay for the 2023 working year. The unions cited mainly the increased cost of living as justification for their demand. After 2 meetings, Labour was willing to bend.
Government progressed to 18. We also progressed to 65.
We've never been difficult. We've been considerate for years, and many things have gone wrong. So I think that is the time to right the wrongs. The single pay salary structure is the most indecent structure in this very country. You will never take anything below the 60%. We are not representing ourselves. We are representing our constituents. And we have to go back and inform our members who sent us to negotiate for them.
Currently, the labor unions have reduced their percentage margin to 50%. Government, which started its negotiation with an initial offer of 8%, agreed to increase the base pay to 18%.
Unfortunately, we have had to table something anytime we have met. But Labour insists on a figure. So we are going back and we'll reconvene.
But Labour has rejected that offer and is asking for more.
Government says they are going to consult. We also stated that we're going to meet our constituents and then we also give them feedback.
At its latest meeting, both parties agreed to bring finality to their negotiations. Here is Deputy Labour Minister Bright Rekubrobe.
We have both decided to come tomorrow to conclude on our negotiations. So tomorrow, God willing, we will share any information. Anywhere we have reached, we will let you know.
Sources close to both parties indicate that government is willing to step up its offer to 20%, whereas the labor unions are making fresh demand for 50% increment in their base pay. For Joy News, Michael Ashale.
All right, so welcome back to the show. It's now time for us to go into the discussions for the day. We're talking about base pay this morning, but I've been joined by my colleague, Benis Abubeidu-Lansa. Oh, this lady is awesome.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
You don't want me to go on?
No. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. And thank you for joining us every morning to do this. We're super grateful for your time. And my colleague, Michael Ashale, who brought us that report that we just heard, has more details on the meetings. You know, this started since last year. And we know how Labour has been very determined to get what it wants. And we told this was the 9th. Apparently, there was another meeting yesterday. The report you heard was one done on Tuesday. We were told there will be a meeting today. So Michael joins us to give us the details. Hello, Michael. Good morning to you. What more should we know about these negotiations for base pay?
So, Ben, as you already mentioned, that this series of meetings didn't start now. It started sometime last year. Yesterday's meeting would be the 9th time that both parties, that is the labor unions and government, have been meeting over this. So when it all started, the labor union said they were looking at the cost of living, and at the time, inflation was skyrocketing. Again, they had to buy fuel at exorbitant prices. So they settled to ask government to pay them 140% increment on their base pay. And not forgetting that they were already enjoying COLA. The difference between these two is that for COLA, which is cost of living allowance, it was just an allowance that was paid on their salaries. So in comparison to this, that is quite small now. And a change in their base pay would effectively mean that every other allowance they also enjoy will effectively also go up. So they're asking for 140% increment in that. Now, meetings down the line, we've had Labour's position changed several times. So from 140%, they now came to 100%. They now again settled for 60%. At the time, they said they were not going to change their mind from there because they have come way too far, from 140 to 60%, trying to meet government at least halfway. But again, that has changed in the last minute, and I'll come back to that. But for government, it will be a very tough moment for them. Arguably, it will be their biggest or hardest negotiations they've had to go through. So government started at 8%. It's the initial offer, whereas the labor unions wanted 140, stark difference. But they managed to come up here. But before I continue with the government offering, just to give you about a bit of background on what government have been able to offer them in the past years. So in 2 years ago, government gave them 4%. Last year, they got an increment for the 2022 working year. Government gave them 7% increment, and that's after months of negotiation. So government hasn't really been able to go way too far. This time round, it said 8 initially. Then that position also changed after labor unions also relaxed on the 140. The last meeting that they had, what I heard was 18%. So that was the last offer government made. Now, in that particular meeting, it was on the same day that inflation for November rather came out in December. In the middle of December, November inflation came out. And that was around 40%, if I'm not mistaken. So 40%. And on that day, labor unions were not happy about the negotiations. They felt that government was not giving them enough. So they had changed their position from 60% to 68%. They had increased their demand. But government pleaded with them. Eventually, they settled for 58% again. What I heard from the last 2 meetings was 50%. These are from our sources within both parties, that Labour is now going to probably settle for 50%, and government will decide to give them 20%. Their offer will be 20%. But Labour already rejected that offer. In yesterday's meeting, which we were promised was going to be the last, and this was Bright Rakupobi, the Deputy Minister for Labour and Employment, in his words that the meetings was expected to come to a conclusion yesterday, but that did not happen. Yesterday's meeting, unlike any other day, it broke into several caucus meetings. Government side would once in a while leave the meeting, try and go and jojo and see whether they can bend to the asking of the labor unions. The labor unions will also do the same. Even though it's a closed door meetings, once in a while when the door is open, you would hear words like, we will not accept it. We'll stand our grounds. We are not children. We are here for what we deserve. So these are words I hear from labor once in a while. Yesterday's meeting dragged on for more than 5 hours. And eventually what we heard, well, again, you've heard from some of them. They are not going to talk to us officially because there's another meeting today which they're hoping will be the final meeting. But I doubt that. So yesterday, what our sources will continue to tell us that the cost of living allowance that's already been paid to them, which is COLA, was supposed to have ended in December. However, unofficially, government has not decided to stop paying it. That, of a sort, took over the meeting, took center stage, and most of the conversation was centered around that. Do we stop paying? Do we continue paying? What we understand is that government has decided to pay at least for January the cost of living allowance. Subsequently, for February going, it will stop paying. However, it will pay what it is yet to label 15% to the labor unions in the interim whilst they continue. That their decision to pay the 15% will be in good faith, so that you don't get what sometimes happens in the past, that when government fails to heed to the demands of these labor unions, then they decide to go on industrial action. So government wants to avoid that. So they want to pay them 50% from February going forward in good faith. However, the labor unions they don't want that conversation to start at all. They feel that will be an insult to them. Even where they have started from and where they have ended, it is nothing close to even the last offering of government, which was 20%.
So Michael, this 15%, what is it for? Because you tell us that the COLA will be stopped by end of January. So 15% for what?
So it's more like we have ended COLA. We are giving you something like COLA, just so that you can, hold on to this for a while. But no label yet. It will not be called COLA. But it is somewhat like COLA, that let's cushion you in the interim, because the prevailing circumstances that you mentioned, or reasons you mentioned in 2022 continue to persist. And that is the cost of living that has skyrocketed in the last 5 months. So we'll give you that to cushion you for now, but we won't call it COLA. I mean, that's what we try to gather, that it won't be called COLA because COLA officially should have ended in 2022. So if we want to give you this, it is in good faith so that you don't decide to go on an industrial action. It tells you that government is committed to, doing something about your salary. But again, we are not sure whether this 15% is going to be calculated on their base pay or will be just given to them as an allowance. That is not something that we managed to gather here, but there's a 15% government is willing to pay somewhere from February going forward. But coming to today's meeting, if you ask me whether there's going to be finality, I highly doubt that. Why am I saying that? I mean, Labour says it will not step down from the 50, and the 50 will be its last, which is unofficial, but it won't go beyond the 50. Government's last offer was 20. I mean, if for nothing at all, government should be appreciated before Labour unions should do that. If you look at the pace at which government has also appreciated in the last 9 meetings, it will be very difficult. And you've heard sometimes even in some of the meetings, some of the members asking for the finance minister himself to rather be in the meeting. To tell you what, I've been following some of these Labour negotiations over some time, and not necessarily because of the base pay, but more often than not, they find it in good faith that the finance minister himself is there. You hear sometimes comments that the deputy ministers that come for the meeting go back to say that they don't have the mandate to agree to the terms that the Labour unions are dictating to them or sometimes asking from them. So they prefer that the finance minister himself is in the meeting. And it's the same thing that has spanned on this particular meeting. They have always asked rather for the finance minister who can agree on the spot or disagree or tell them the true state of Ghana's economy for them to appreciate it. Other than that, it will only be, this is what we want, government to say that this is all we can give you. And even for that, we cannot say that that is exactly what we can agree on. We still need the permission from the finance minister, who knows exactly how much government has and can pay to you. So if you don't find the finance minister there, you don't find the Labour union smiling that much. They only come for the meeting knowing perfectly well that it won't go anywhere without the finance minister. So today, they are hoping that the finance minister himself will come. Other than that, I don't see this conversation ending anytime soon. Yesterday was a promise that it would have ended from the Deputy Minister for Labour and Employment, but that did not happen. In fact, there was no offer was given yesterday. So it will be tight. It will be difficult to say that the Labour negotiations will end today.
But have you picked any indication from Labour itself as to their reaction to this delay and what they intend doing to force government to really compromise on its stance?
So you pick up bits of an industrial action is available to us. A strike is available to us. So particularly for yesterday, you hear some of them, most of them, unlike ever before, left without uttering a single word. The day before that, which was on Tuesday, you hear some of them, come out chit-chatting, some of them smiling. But yesterday's meeting was very different. Many of them came out lip tight, no smiling, and even for government, which is very unusual, did not utter a single word. So it's a bit tense at this moment in time. And like I've been hearing from some of them, an industrial action is not far from where we stand as it is. But again, they also know the repercussions of an industrial action on Ghana's circumstance currently. We are the IMF. Again, inflation doesn't seem to stop. For December, it's over 50%. So for them, they understand the difficult decision that we'll have to take at the end of the day. But as to whether government will allow them or will let them get to that point as well, it's a different situation. So, Brace, it's tight. It's very difficult as it stands now.
Okay. But what was their last, the percentage in terms of which they want government to increase the base pay? What was the last time? Because they moved from 140 to 100 to 60. What was the last one they're asking for?
Yes, so they haven't given any figure. Now, again, the 50%, what our sources tell us, the last official figure they gave us was 58%, 58%. And the last official figure we got from government was 18%. But our sources tell us that both parties are willing to change that. So from 58, Labour is willing to come to 50, and government is willing to come to 20%. Those were the figures we found from our sources.
Okay.
Right, Michael, we'll leave it here. And Michael Ashali just gave us details of what to expect in that meeting between government and Labour over base pay negotiations. And we'll keenly be monitoring the event and bring you the details as and when they are available. But like I was saying earlier before Michael came in, Labour has been very forceful. Labour has been very strong. Even talking about the debt restructuring and how Labour kicked against government touching pensions, and we saw how they were able to pull the strings and win in the end. So we'll see how this goes. Again, I remember sometime last year the Employment Ministry expressed a bit of frustration about these negotiations with Labour. We've been joined by Labour expert Austin Gummy. Good morning to you, sir, and thank you for joining the program. Let's start off with how long this has dragged and the potential to affect government business, because we know these meetings are held consistently. They've been trying to reach an agreement, but they've not been able to do so.
Thank you. Well, I'm not surprised because, first of all, let me say that a lot of the people, the working people, like the nurses, like a number of them, I work for them as a consultant, so I'm not a stranger entirely to whatever is going on, except that I'm not physically present at these meetings. Now, let me say this. Traditionally, in Ghana, we don't pay working people based on productivity. We pay based on inflation, cost of living, and appearance at the workplace. Because this is the tradition we have, it's always a positional negotiation. That is to say that Labour may make a demand, management may want to pay whatever they think is fitting, and so it's positional. You move, I move until they either are on strike or somebody from behind the scene appealed to conscience and then they give in. So we are not the type of nation, even strangely, private sectors pay based upon inflation, cost of living, and so forth and so on. But our labor law enjoins us to pay matching the remuneration with productivity. That way, the workers are likely to get more, and the employer is likely to have more. Nobody will be losing. Unfortunately, that is not the situation we find ourselves in. Even though clearly our labor law enjoins us to negotiate based on interest and not position. Well, this is the way we have lived with it all these years. Again, strangely, even private sectors, strangely, except one or two that are paying based on productivity, and they share information. They share detailed information. The government people, they just go to the meeting, and information that is shared is very scanty. And so they cannot be able to empathize with them the way they wish they could. And therefore, labor is unable to yield to the kind of lamentation sometimes the employers, come up with. So it's most unfortunate we are in this condition, but because that is the way we have chosen to do, and that is how they teach it even in the schools. They teach the professionals how to bargain and not negotiation. So we are bargaining, as if you are in Makola and you ask for something and you ask for reduction, and then they are moving. That's very strange, but that's what we do in this country.
So, Mr. Game, if I get you clearly, if we are going to practice what is in the books, what it will mean is that even in hard times like we find ourselves, if there's only going to be any major adjustment to salaries or base pay or allowances, it will be because you are giving your employer some good results in terms of productivity and not necessarily because the times are hard.
Definitely. I mean, paying for people putting in appearance at the workplace, it's a bizarre situation in which you find ourselves. Our labor law forbids that. But because people are not truthful, let me give you a very simple example. If you yourself sitting there on the street, you and your husband in your home, your husband, you definitely know because you share information that your husband earns 10,000 Ghana cedis a month. And then you have put in a budget of 11,500 Ghana cedis as your chop money. How reasonable is that? It's just not going to happen. And therefore, we expect that your husband will share detailed information with you. And so together with you, you sit around the table based on that information, the interest of the house, the interest of the children, the interest of everything, your medication and everything will be taken into consideration. For now, that is not what we do in this country. What we do is I come with a bowl and I ask, pour it in it for me, whether you have it or not. Where it is impossible, then we take, adversarial approach to the whole thing. So unfortunately, that's how it is. But our labor law is very clear in Section 97, very clear in 98, so Section G, match remuneration with productivity. That way, the workers will get more. That way, the employer will get more. Nobody will feel any pinch of anything. Unfortunately, that's not how we do it.
It's interesting, the scenario you cited. But how about look at it this way? Because from the point of labor, and even in times past, labor has said, look, you say there's no money, but we see you pump money into other sectors that we think that we deserve most. So in the scenario you just cited, say a husband earns 10,000 cedis, but gives 5,000 towards maybe football activities with his friends and gives 3,000 to his wife, who in this case is the worker. And then the wife says, I think I deserve more. Can you cut the 5,000 you're giving to the football activities so that you can give me some more? Is that not a representation of what we're seeing?
Well, unfortunately, that is a marriage of convenience. That's not a true marriage. A true marriage, your husband will share detailed information. He's an honest man anyway. So therefore, that will not happen in a circumstance where it's a proper marriage. If it's marriage by convenience, fine. If it's just girlfriend, boyfriend, maybe you suffer that. If it's just some common law type of marriage where people are living because of accommodation and so forth, and so those things can happen. But a genuine husband will share detailed information. Now, that's how employers ought to be. The law, even the law, is very clear. It's not based upon ethics. It's based upon reality. That is what the law enjoins us to do. And I can tell you on authority that I work as a consultant for companies, and we do just that. We share detailed information with unions. Unions that you can describe as very tough negotiators. Because we share detailed information, they empathize. It takes us sometimes 2 hours to complete negotiation. Sometimes maximum 1 day to complete negotiation. But you are negotiating 7, 8, 9 times of meeting. The cost of even the meeting is very high. So it's about sharing detailed information. This happened before in 2014, thereabout, when it became very, very difficult for the country. The former president took the entire labor union leadership, plus UTAG and all the people that matters, everybody. I was present at home. And we shared detailed information the Minister for Finance, Mr. Setekpe, presented PowerPoint presentation. Halfway into the presentation, everybody changed his mind. That's how come the manner in which they ended up, maybe with IMF the last time, wasn't acrimonious as we are seeing today. So I think that is very important that information in detail is shared. Let people trust and have confidence in you. When you get to table, because you have shared this detailed information, the basis for the negotiating will be an interest approach and not positional. This one is positional. I'm coming for 100%. I brought it down to 58. I go back to 65. I come down to 50. Clearly, I know this is how the movement will be. And if you have movement like this, you end up with Labour Commission. What do you expect the Labour Commission to do? The Labour Commission is not in charge of the purse. They will ask you what you can afford based upon information that is available. So I think that we have to change our posture. Strangely, even the private sector is like that.
Mr. Game, another thing which is quite disturbing about what you've raised so far is how we are more or less practicing an illegality because the law says otherwise, but we are not doing it. At the heart of this is our ability to measure productivity. I remember speaking to the head of the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, and that came up. How do we realistically measure productivity? Because in this case, like you say, government is even in a tight corner, because if you say you're going to do what is in the books, how do you even measure the productivity in the first place? What can we do in that regard to ensure that what the law says is what we are practicing?
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. The point is that I've heard many people talking about, in a cheap way, talking about how can it be measured, it cannot be measured, it's subjective, it's so and so. It's all waste of time and energy. It can be done. It can be done. And it can be done, I would not like to use the word simpler per se, but it can be done reasonably easily. It is because people lack knowledge and the capacity to do it. It doesn't mean it cannot be done. There are people who are capable of doing it. Even people are inviting people from Ghana here to Nigeria to assist them to do it. So please, it's doable. That's why we put it in the law. It's doable.
So how do we do it? What are the mechanisms? How do we realistically ensure that we are measuring the productivity of workers?
Look, as you are sitting on the set right now, you have specific assigned roles you have to play in your organization there. And after doing what you are doing now, you are supposed to do other things and submit other reports and so forth and so on. That way, I believe the strategy of your employer is to ensure that when you contribute your quota, your other colleagues they contribute their quota, you get more advertisement, you get more attention, your station becomes the preferred station, and therefore your income is enhanced, therefore your pay can be enhanced, and the quota is very clear, very, very clear. If your employer would do that, and it must begin from our schools, they must train the people, the lecturers themselves must have adequate and sufficient capability of teaching that, and after that, people must be skilled enough to be able to translate into an actionable thing. It's not a talking shop business. It's not an economic issue to go and hide behind numbers. It's about translating human resource management practitioners have the capacity to do it. And I've been talking to my friends and colleagues in the fraternity all the time that we are creating problem for nothing. The point is that our law is very clear that we must match remuneration. The word is matching remuneration with productivity. You have to detail it down, train your heads of departments and those who will be collecting the data and doing the appraisal. And where people have conversation one-on-one, you and I sat and we have conversation, we documented the thing. The thing we document is the very thing we will use for the appraisal. And so there is nothing called subjectivity. There's nothing like looking at your face because you are from this region, because you belong to this, because you belong to this church. Therefore, you get A, somebody gets B and C. No, it must be done properly. And once it is done, and it can be done, I want to assure you of that because we do it in other companies. I can't mention them on your set, but we do it, and it's doable. And the law is very, very clear. There is no ambiguity in it. It is because people lack the knowledge, understanding, and the skill to be able to actionalize it. That's why we are having a problem.
Well, Mr. Game, could you brace here? So, like you're saying, we should match remuneration to productivity. Whose responsibility is it to ensure that that is done?
The employer principally is number one. But you have social partners, the unions. Even if they are not unionized, you have working people. You must sit with them, have regard for them, be honest and open to them. And the law, again, in Section 9, very clear. It says the employer must be open in every aspect of their dealings with the working people. That's what our law says. It's not an ethics business. It is clear-cut HR and industrial relations practice. You must be open in an honest approach to these things. Once you are honest, your people, your working people will be honest with you. But if you pretend and you are sharing numbers that are untrue, like we said earlier with my sister, that if the husband is earning 10,000 and the husband now declares 7,000 because he wants to hide 3,000 to go and share with his side chicks and go and drink with his friends, in some ghetto, clearly she will be angry, and that marriage will not even last. It's the same principle. If you come to the workplace, you as an employer, you must learn you are a father to everybody in the house there, and therefore you must be honest and open and share information as the law requires. If you don't want to be very, very, very sensitive to this type of things, then go by the law under Section 97 and share the information in detail. And nobody will feel bad about it. And we do it in companies, and we negotiate for not more than a day. Very sensitive organizations in Ghana here, we do the same thing. And so it's an excuse. And I can tell you far back, I joined with the Public Services Commission. We detailed these things down completely. They have the documents there. It can be done. And I don't know the reason why they are finding it difficult to do. And our labor unions are not insensitive. If you engage them and you sit with them and you want to pay based on productivity, they will sit with you and do it. That's the point.
Well, interesting. But it looks like we've been in this for quite some time. I mean, Labour and government have been going back and forth on this since last year. And we are in a gridlock now. We don't know when the end is going to come. So with your knowledge of, negotiation and how things like remuneration should be, what do you expect both parties to do so that there could be an end in sight?
Well, two things will happen. One, this will have to call for some kind of facilitated mediation, not traditional mediation approach, but a facilitated one properly. The Labour Commission can be able to do it. They can also choose to engage the services of private facilitated mediators who have the capacity to lead in this kind of interest-based approach type of negotiation. I believe that it can be done. There may be people in the country, other than myself, who can lead them. But if I am called upon, that's why I'm not at the meeting, because I feel betrayed that I'll go to that meeting. I already know even what to say because of the toxic nature of how we have kept this thing going on and never wanting to change. It must begin right from our investors. They have to change the methodology of teaching these things, because the law is very clear. You can't teach anything contrary to this principle. If you teach anything contrary to this principle, the result you are getting is what you will get.
Okay.
The result you are getting is what you will get. And what you are getting is positional negotiation. I come in with 100%, 140% demand. I will give you 5%. And you are moving. What it means is that you are not honest. Both parties are dishonest, because why did you ask for something and you are changing your mouth? Sit with your partner, share information, and what is locked in is what is locked in. Both of you will accept it in no time. But this kind of acrimonious type of negotiation is a very bizarre thing, and I don't see them being able, except one to be generous by way of saying that, okay, we are tired of it, we'll accept it. So they'll have to find a way of packaging what is appropriate, and the language is what is appropriate, and not what I want or what you want to give. That way, and next year we'll repeat the same thing again, because we don't learn. So we have to change our ways. I hope any whether it is NPP government coming, whether it is NDC coming, whichever way it is, I hope they've all learned lessons and they will never repeat this kind of thing again.
Finally from me, Mr. Game, you say that next year this will repeat. Aren't we doing this too often than normal, these government labor negotiations? And what is the proper practice? How often should negotiations be done?
Immediately they finish this negotiation, if I were to be the employer, and all employers are listening to you, they must learn to learn how to go about what the law says. Section 97 is very clear, Section 9 is very clear, Section 98 is very clear, and they are expected to have cardinal rules that will govern the principles of the negotiation. Under Section 101, subsection 3 is very clear. And I recall that a draft of these rules was done for them, and so they have the rules. They must go by the rules that govern the principle of the negotiation. And another point I've heard you said on your program is that the people who are the decision makers, who are supposed to be at the meeting, and somebody will not say that we don't have the mandate and we're not present. You must be present, because the Standing Negotiating Committee is higher than any other board of directors. And so if you are going to make a decision, you must properly share information. Everybody is on the same page. You don't come singing from a different Methodist hymn book, somebody singing from an Aladura hymn book. The same hymn book everybody is singing from, because you have shared information. But in this circumstance, it's like everybody is doing something that is different. And so we are not going to reach any agreement anytime soon. Next year, they must get people to train them and to guide them so that they don't go repeating this same thing again. Because repetition doesn't speak well of anybody. I can't make mistakes and repeat the same mistake time and time again.
Well, you speak of the fact that we negotiate on interests and not positions. From the way things are going, do you foresee that changing for the parties to now negotiate on interest and not positions, as you alluded to earlier?
Because they haven't shared detailed information, in these circumstances it will be difficult. Look, like I said, I have insisted all employers that I'm a consultant to, I said, let's share information. Because I can't go and disgrace myself at a meeting where we put in a bid by saying that, well, we'll pay you 5%. Apparently, we intend paying 15%. So was I lying? Was I dishonest? Was I open to my working people? So share information. That's how we concluded that fateful day in Ho, when the former government was willing to do that. They shared detailed information. And I heard loudly the Union Secretary General said, oh, why have you delayed in sharing this information? I heard UTAC saying, let's close down the meeting, let's go to caucus. When they returned, they said, everybody, let's leave them. These things that have been shared for us is very clear enough. Everything. So you can't waste money. You can't go and engage in some projects that may not be helpful. The people will tell you that, no, this project can delay. They can tell you so. And so it is very important that we share information. If you have debt to pay, what is the amortization period? All these details are shared. And I can tell you we share it in every private companies that are willing to do it. We share it. And because we share this detailed information, including the amortization period of how to retire our indebtedness, the unions are willing because they want job security. They want income security. They want assurance of retaining their status in the business. And training is done for them. Promotion is given to them where it is due. But when you are doing the thing by looking at people's faces and so on, they will tell you are being subjective. I want to urge your station. You can make it a point. I'll be willing to come and we share it, both private, and then we can see that you can see clearly that it can be done. It can be done, and it can be done easily if you like. I'll add that word for it to it for you.
Right.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
Our colleague, our reporter on the ground told us earlier that government has decided to pay some 15%. As COLA is going to end this month, they would begin to pay some 15% for the workers, but they don't know the name that, we don't know as of yet, the name they are going to call it. Is that a normal practice when, because we have not finished negotiation, we say we're going to pay some percentage to make up for the changes in the economy or your expenditure?
Well, they will create problem for themselves if they do that. Look, the law is very clear. Section 9, subsection G of Labor Act 2003 as 651 is very clear. It says the employer must have an open channel, plural, of communication with his people. That's what the law says. Fortunately for you, I was the chairman of the committee that drafted the law. So I'm not speaking from an unknown position. It took us 4 years to write the law. To be very honest with you, we are not implementing even 1/4 of the law yet. If we are doing that, we won't sit where we are sitting now talking about this thing as if it's not been done before. What is this? So if you are going to pay something, you don't know the title for the thing, give it a title, be open to them and let them appreciate what you are saying. It's about an appreciative approach. If people don't appreciate something, they will tell you, well, we'll hold it, but that is not what we want. And to become foolish money, you are paying. So please, what they have to do is, do they have a 15%? If they have that 15% and they want to pay it as part of the package, then they should tell them, example, we are paying you 20% or 25%. We will pay you 15% as COLA. This cost of living adjustment allowance was introduced as far back as 1984. I fought part of the team that came to Accra to negotiate with Dr. Dodo at the time. Dr. Mbia led us from the TUC. And so clearly it's not something new. As far back as 1984, when there was this devastating fire outbreak and our people were being pushed from Nigeria to Ghana, 1 million people who were new in the revolution, and the inflation had galloped to about 123% or so, we demanded payment of COLA. That was how it was introduced. I myself, I was part of the district union that came to Accra to negotiate it. So clearly, it's nothing new that is being done. Now we have a labor law that has made it easier for us to negotiate. We are making it as if we don't have people that can guide us. I'm really ashamed of it anyway. But what else can we do? So if they have something to pay, they should open up, and be frank and honest with them. They will pay. The TUC and organized labor people are not insensitive. They will listen to them And once they have assurance that, no, this is a very honest and open communication that is going on, they will yield to it. They will yield to it. But when you make it, when you hide it, like the haircutting that is going on now, it's the same principle. They will resist it. If you open up, it will be a different story. We have to open up.
Okay.
This is our country. We need to protect the interests of the country. And so everybody must be willing to support. But if you don't open up, and I'm referring you to 2014, when it became very critical, the same situation. We're using almost 68 to 70% of the national income to paying just 2 or 3 items. And the former president, took the whole people to whole, and we sat there for 3 days. When we shared the detailed information, that was the end of it. At the time, UTAG was on strike. Some people were on strike. The unions were threatening. After the meeting, that ended it. Before we ended up in Senchi, before we ended up at Takwade, before the IMF, there was no acrimony in the country. It can be done. This is our own country. We must support the president and his team to be able to do it, but they must open up.
Okay. So you think this is what will make them, make their parties change from the entrenched positions they've all taken, right?
Because right now, we pay inflation, we pay cost of living, that is what we pay. That thing is meant to be able to determine the national daily minimum wage only. Where because we have projected an inflation X and we ended up actual being AB, when we get to the meeting, we do a restoration of what actually we projected and what the outcome happened to be. So out of that, we do a restoration. Plus and minus cost of living, we then round it up and say this is now the national daily minimum wage. That is what is intended to achieve. But when it comes to paying people, it must be based upon productivity. Because we don't practice that and we are paying inflation, what is the inflation today? It's about
54.1.
Yeah,
54.1.
54.1.
So pay the inflation now. If that is the character of our teaching methodology in our schools, and that's what we practice in our ministries of finance and so forth and so on, then pay the inflation. You see now where we are lost? We are supposed to be paying based upon productivity. Matching remuneration. Remuneration goes beyond base pay. It's the entirety of the cost of the business, of labor. So what is it? We don't know. How much money did government get? We must know in total, including grants, and all those details were shared in 2014. The Minister of Finance, you can ask Tekpa, he will tell you the details. And I have it too. Detailed in PowerPoint. Because it was shared, the unions were not insensitive. They yielded to it. And I believe in the present government, they can be able to do it. We have very notable people. They should be able to do it. If they cannot do it, we are 14 million adults in this country, including me. They can invite us. We can all sit there and talk. There's nothing like these people belong to this or these people belong to this. Me, I'm a consultant. I don't belong to any political party. So if you ask me, I'll show you the direction you should go.
Really appreciate your time this morning. Mr. Austin Gami is a labor consultant, and he has been sharing his expertise with us on what we can do to resolve this matter, and most importantly, how we can get to practicing what the books say. That is focusing on what is legally approved when it comes to negotiations for salaries in this country. Well, we've got